Time to get your fix.
Come on down, get your horrible gaming review. 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 Wow.
Hello, my name is Zachariah with Old Man Gaming, and welcome back to another horrible game review. So, before we get into it, a couple of disclaimers. Number one, the word horrible used in the title of this video does not necessarily refer to the game or content that I am reviewing here, but the actual content itself, being that I do snap judgment reviews. I usually get about 5 to 10 hours with these games. I'm just trying to give you an idea whether you're going to enjoy this game right off the bat or not. Number two, I don't give scored reviews for video games. I think it's one of the most subjective forms of art. So therefore, you will get an overview of what the game is, in my opinion, and then in my opinion, I will give you the pros and cons of that game. Again, my opinion, as all reviews are. And then I will tell you whether or not, personally, I'm going to stick with this game outside the purposes of this review itself. All right, those out of the way. What am I reviewing today? I am reviewing Godfall, the Sony launch title for PS5. However, I reviewed it on PC. It came out this last Thursday on PlayStation 5 with the release of the system. If you were playing PC, however, it came out at 4 p.m. on Wednesday in Epic Game Store only, which is unfortunate. So, what's Godfall? Godfall's a strange one. It is a looter slasher. So, the idea of this game is you are trying to collect loot and crafting materials to make your loot better with a generous helping of level-based skill point build mechanics thrown in. So the overall story is a very simple one. Although this seems to take place in some fantasy world where there aren't any real humans, you play a very ambiguous character named Orin. Orin's brother, Macross, betrays him, leaves him for dead, and takes over this world of Archon? Arthurion? Something like that. In any case, you then go on a quest for revenge and to stop Macross from becoming a god. To do this, you must don these medieval futuristic sort of aesthetic suits of armor called Valor Plates. The Valor Plates all have a different thing to them. You start with the Silvermane one. That's the one you saw in the preview that makes you kind of look like a lion. Then as you run around doing stuff, you collect other ones, crafting supplies that allows you to build other ones and make them available to you. Now, the game itself has a very simple loop. After the tutorial, you start in this kind of hub area called the Seven Sanctum. The Sanctum gives you missions. There are also side missions that you can do that you access from the main hub. Now, there is some exploration, so you can there's at least one unique mission for each area where you can just go in and explore and loot and kill to your heart's content. Then there are other missions that have a point where you have to kill a certain thing or defeat a certain bad guy or something along those lines. Now, as you do this, you'll unlock different areas that give you different crafting supplies, yada, 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 yada. As you go along as well, you will open chests and collect loot from downed bad guys in the form of weapons. There are 5 different weapon types in this game. Greatsword, longsword, hammer, dual blades, and a polearm. Each with kind of its own style, its own way of playing. And you can actually take 2 of them out in your loadout and switch between them. This game starts off very basic. It actually feels almost too hack and slashy. When I first played this, I got about an hour in and I was kind of regretting my purchase. But then I started to unlock the skill point tree and found the real beauty in this game. There are so many ways to play as far as the skills unlock. And almost all of your secondary, more strategic moves are unlocked through actually opening up skills in your tree as you level up. The max cap is 50. I do not believe there is a way to unlock every level of every ability on the tree. However, you can respec at any time at no cost, which is nice. In addition to all this, what's unique about a game like this is that you can actually upgrade and even improve the rarity of the items you find. Usually in games like this, that's not the way it is. You have to throw away old weapons or weapons that have ceased to deal damage or that you've out-leveled. In this one, if you find a weapon you like, you can pretty much stick with it for the long haul. Not only just improving its overall damage, but giving it random attributes by collecting crafting supplies and upgrading it, and even increasing its rarity from, a blue to a purple to even a legendary, which is, I found, really refreshing and cool, and one of the coolest parts about the loot system in this game. Too many times in Borderlands I'd find a gun I absolutely love the feel of, and just I'd keep it way too long because it got out-leveled and then it would be useless. I just liked using it, and it always bothered me that I couldn't take it with me, whereas with this, you find a weapon you like, take it with you by all means, and I really enjoy that about this. All that said, I think it gives you a basic overview of this game pretty well. So, let's go into the pros and cons, and then whether or not I'm going to stick with it. And stick around at the end, because there is one thing about this game that has made me very angry, and I'm going to rant about it a little bit there. Alright, let's start off positive first, and go pros. The number one pro of this game, without a doubt, is the builds. The build diversity in this game, at least at this particular juncture. Like, I haven't hit endgame yet, in all fairness. I haven't seen what that end is like. But right now, every build is viable. I think the build diversity in this is amazing. The way you can combine your skills with the different weapon abilities that you have with your armor. There's so many different ways to build out your character, so many different effects to focus on, so many tricks to find and unwind. There's one trick that I've already liked where there's a thing called polarity attacks if you unlock it, where if you have two weapons, you fight with and you have polarity attacks. The more you attack with one weapon, you fill up this bar. If you don't switch until that bar is full, when you switch, you do this AO effect damage. Well, I've really enjoyed then pairing that up with some serious ailment damage, and actually, instead of having two different weapons, having the exact same weapon leveled up as much as I can. And then I just get this really awesome polarity attack while also causing the ailments. It's just great. There's so many ways to build out your character that right off the bat you're gonna be feeling that, especially if you like loot games like this. Before you can even make a viable build, you're gonna be seeing the potential for them, and that's a lot of fun. Next, let's bring it to the graphics. We might talk about a little bit in the cons for a different reason, but the graphics of this game are beautiful. And really what I want to focus on is the art style of this game, and the art direction is phenomenal. Every weapon looks cool. It has some interesting design to it. Every Valor plate, it looks interesting. It's just such a treat to look at everything in this game. All the bad guys look cool. I know that there's been some people have said sameness in bad guys. I don't agree. I think they all look really cool. They're really fun to fight, and it's very interesting just to look at, just to load in and look at it. My next pro has to build a little bit off the build system, but the close combat in this game is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I cannot tell you how satisfying and rewarding this game is when you start to get good at the combat, and you can really feel yourself getting good. What's even better about it is you can change the way you like to play so easily, and it's just so customizable. It's not like I have to figure out how to do this parrying thing. Don't like parrying? Alright, upgrade your dodging abilities, and you'll be able to dodge everything. Don't like dodging? Upgrade your parrying abilities. Use that to parry. Don't like, big, ridiculous aggressive play? Unlock weak points. It's just, there's so many ways to, not just build off the weapons and abilities and trees, but build off the actual way you play. And that's something I loved, is that every time I respect my character, and I'm only like, I want to say like 8 hours in, I've already respect my character like 5 times, which we'll kind of get into that in the cons, but one of the coolest things is just that, like, it changed each time I did, it changed fundamentally the way I moved and attacked in combat. Usually with first-person shooters, and I'm not trying to, call out first-person shooters, they're fine, but it's a math equation. You get the best build, and then you hold down the button while pointing your gun at the bad guys, and you kill them faster. That's oversimplification, but with this, it's not like that. I just want to pontificate for a second, get into a little bit of an example. The other day, I was playing with Phil. I was over-leveled. Phil Billy, sorry. I was over-leveled. I was about 6 levels above the character that he was playing. And I was in his game. While I was in his game, we had a slight hiccup where at halfway through, all the characters started leveling to me. I think that's a bug. We'll talk about it a little bit in the cons. But one of the cool things was, while they were all scaled to him, I was by no means just laying waste to everybody. Now, I wasn't having a lot of trouble, but I had to actually work at the fights. I still had to put that work in. And I wasn't killing everything so fast that Phil didn't get to actually do anything, which is amazing. What's even cooler is then when it did start leveling to me, Phil actually was still useful. He got his butt kicked in a lot of areas, but he could actually just play against certain things and move the right way and actually pick them to death. And the difference was like level 16 and level 6. And that is awesome. Like, if you play Borderlands and it's not scaled, and you turn off the level scaling, obviously, the person who is 10 levels higher will literally lay waste to anything in the lower level game, to the point where the lower level doesn't even have to pull the trigger. Whereas vice versa, the lower level will just die immediately if they run into anything in the higher levels game. It's just not like that in this, and I found that so refreshing and awesome that they somehow found that balance. All right, so the next pro I want to get into is a little bit quicker, which I'm glad. I'm going on for a little bit too long here, but and that would be the voiceover work. Phenomenal. And again, we're going to talk about in the cons, the story is not that great. The voiceover work is still so good, it kind of carries it, especially the main character. One of the weird things that we're kind of going to talk about in cons and kind of going to talk about in another pro, which is, it's kind of strange. I don't really know how to talk about this one, whether it is a positive or a negative, but half of the armors, the Valor plates that you get, present as female, where the other half present as male. When you are in a female armor, a female Valor plate, your character speaks with a female voice. When you're in the male Valor plate, you speak with a male voice, which is very interesting. But what's cool is both of those voices are phenomenal. And they're taking dialogue that is pretty run-of-the-mill most of the time and just somehow making it interesting. I really have to give them props, because the writing in this game is probably its weakest point as far as storyline goes, and these guys are just acting the hell out of this. So props to them. Now let's move into the cons. Let's move into the negatives. Okay? Look, I'm only 8 hours in. It might take some really cool turns at the end. And while I say I do find a lot of interest in the codex, I read them all, and all the cool flavor texts, I think the world is kind of interesting. The story itself is very generic and explains very little unless you read that stuff. So I kind of wish the writing was a little bit better. It could take some really cool twists at the end. I'm not saying it doesn't, but right now it's kind of a con. The story is very run-of-the-mill. So then let's move on to the next con. The next con would be the graphics. Okay, so here's something that's very strange about this game. They tote that it is not a games as service. And really, when you're playing the game, there's no games as service model to this. I mean, most games as service are very heavily based on loot. With that said, there is a lot of loot in this game, but there's no microtransactions. There's no even place for microtransactions. There's no loot boxes. There's nothing like that. I mean, other than the chests that you open in the game itself, but no actual out-of-game loot boxes. So, I don't know. The thing, though, is it still always has to be connected to the internet, which is very games as servicey. And I don't know why that is. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. That being said, I think it actually kind of hurts the game. And here's why. So when I first got it, one thing about it is its graphical requirement for a PC is about 100 more than mine. It requires a 5700, whereas I'm running a 5600 at an overclock. And I immediately noticed a lurch on day one. So I played with my settings. It got a little bit better. And that was actually kind of irritating me because my computer's not that low, and I turned down the settings. It should work. The next day, I had no lurch whatsoever, but I was playing it during the day. And then I had a lurch again the other day when I was playing it at night. So it makes me think that because it's connected to the internet all the time, I'm getting this weird lurch even when I'm playing it alone. That's a little bit annoying. I don't even know why this game has to be always online. It really doesn't need to be. I mean, you can play with other people. The multiplayer is very good in this, but it's more like Monster Hunter than it is like Destiny. Like, there's nobody running around your perpetual world. It's not MMO-y, so I don't know why it's always have to be connected to the internet. It's very strange. My next con is, without a doubt, the fact that you cannot save any sort of loadout for skills. So you can save a loadout for every armor you unlock that's specific to that armor, which is amazing. It will even stop you from salvaging something that's tied to a loadout, just to make sure you don't accidentally lose it. And all you have to do is go to the armor you want to use with the build you want to use and put it on. That's so cool. There's nothing like that in other console looter games, and that's beautiful. Anybody who's a big fan of builds will love that. The thing that's annoying, now, the skills on your character, you can't do the same thing. Don't get me wrong. You can respec as much as you want without any sort of cost buying thing. There's no money or anything for it. You could just hit respec and all your points go back into a pool and you can reassign them. That's tedious, though, to have to do that every time I switch from a different build to a different build, because depending on the build, I want my skills to be different. So I wish they had a way to set it up so that I could have 4 or 5 skill point builds set up as loadouts and just switch back and forth between them. I hope that's an update they make at some point. I think it would be really cool and fit with the aesthetic of this game and how easy they made building. I would be, of course, remiss if I did not point out there are some bugs to this game. Nothing game-breaking, nothing even as bad as some of the main titles, which is what we're going to get to in my little rant towards the end of this. But there's some stuff, like the other day when I was playing with Philbilly, it kept giving me a message that he had left the game when we were clearly still playing together without any problems. Of course, I mentioned earlier in the pros the scene where all of a sudden all the bad guys in his game switched to my level for no apparent reason. Stuff like that. Again, most of this stuff is probably going to get patched out after a couple of updates, but still, it's worth mentioning. There are a couple of slightly annoying bugs in this, but very few, especially compared to some of the other games that have been released on the market. Another thing I do want to say that's very irritating, when you join somebody else's game, your hub is your own, which means that you don't see them running around in the hub, or you don't run around in their hub. You're not together. With that being said, if somebody invites you, you can't join right into their action if they're in it. So, you'll join their game. It'll keep you from joining anything because you're not the party leader, but you've got to wait till they finish whatever they're doing in the actual action of the game. That's annoying. I want to be able to just go right into the action when they ask me to join. So I found that really frustrating and something that needed to be mentioned here. A big con of this game, I can't stress this enough, this is probably the thing that irritated me the most about it, is the difficulty. Now, first of all, the game itself is not inherently easy. I want to make that very clear. The way combat works makes you really get good to actually win it, even when you have a great build. My problem, however, is that there is no consequence to losing. If you are on normal or easy and you die, you just respawn basically right outside the fight, and the bad guys don't even get their health back. You cannot fail out of a quest. You could just keep dying and just keep doing it until they pick them apart. There's a healing. It makes the healing mechanic useless. It makes most of the mechanics useless. There's no consequences on normal. None. Which is irritating because it forces you to turn the difficulty up to hard. And then because on hard, if you lose 3 times, you fail the quest, which I like much better. However, you're then on hard, so you have to get really good because they're tough. That bothered me heavily. I don't like no severity in the game whatsoever. It makes some of the systems that you've handcrafted, like the life crystal system, almost completely useless because I could just walk in, wail on things until I die without doing any defensive actions or whatever, immediately respawn and do it again. Just keep doing it over and over again until I win. And that was really, really annoying. So I can't stress this enough. My biggest con is the difficulty level. And that is specifically directed to the respawn mechanics for normal. My final con is not one of my own, but I feel like I have to speak for another fellow who is very into games like this, and that would be Philbilly. He wanted to point out that there is some stats that are missing from being able to look them up. There's also some irritating ways that they put the stats down where you can't see the totals. Let me explain. You can unlock a northern and southern technique, which are like special abilities for your weapon, but it doesn't actually tell you what each weapon's northern and southern attack damage does. So it's very hard when you have a weapon that says, well, percentage of this northern or southern attack goes up by 15%. Well, we never know what the base is, so we can't do that math. And builds are all about math and knowing what the numbers are, so we need to see those numbers. The other thing is that I found personally irritating, if you check the Archon page, you can see like its individual stats, but it does not factor in the weapons you have equipped or the skills that you have unlocked. So like I have one that causes poison damage that has a high percentage of poison damage, and I put a build together to increase that percentage of poison damage. If I look at that Valor plate, it says 28% to poison. I know it's at least above 50 because of the skills that I've unlocked plus the weapons I have on. I wish that they would just total it up for you somewhere so you could see the exact numbers. All right, so let's motor through whether or not I'm going to stick with it, because I think by now you guys have all figured out I am. I really enjoy this game. I also think that the marrying of a strong melee-based system with the loot just makes this game so fun. It makes it fun on multiple levels. It's not just about the build or the equipment that you get. It is also about the way you play, and that is just the best of both worlds. It's honestly the thing, in my opinion, that misses from every FPS with this kind of looter-shooter mechanic is the fact that the playing doesn't always matter that much, whereas in this, it does, and that's great. I can get better in 2 different ways, and that's awesome. It's not just about the math equation, but it's not just about the play. So I will definitely be continuing to play this. At the very least, we're doing a show about it, probably premiering in 2 weeks. Well, it already premiered. You can check out the 2-hour live stream me and Philbilly did, but we're actually going to start releasing 30-minute, half-hour Let's Plays of it, probably in 2 weeks, so you can check that out. I do now want to go on my small rant to finish this off, and I'm sorry this video is going long, but this has to be said. I'm going to probably speak more in depth about it on the next episode of the podcast, which I believe will be 68. But I believe fully now in the corruption and absolute destitute lack of morals that mainstream reviewing video game media has. What I am speaking of directly is IGN and the other places like it. Video games are the only place, the only medium with critics like this that are actually funded by the people they're criticizing. What I mean is, movie critics are not funded by moviegoers, by the people making the movies. They're funded by the people who go to the movies buying their stuff or seeing their ads on their stories or whatever. Same with a lot of other stuff. Video games, however, they are directly funded. The reviewers are directly funded by the developers of these games, and then causes a serious problem and a serious conflict of interest. And if you don't believe me, go into IGN. Look at this game. Play this game for any period of time. And then go play Marvel's Avengers for any period of time. This game, some minor bugs, I have already pointed them out. But a solid melee combat system, a solid loot system, great graphical fidelity, just a great all-around game. It's not going to win any Game of the Years, but it's a solid game. Marvel's Avengers, nearly unplayable, only saved by its story and some very minor, interesting ideas. Tons of glitches, tons of bugs. They had to fix 1,000 bugs in the first 3 patches. They even say it by their own hand. Marvel's Avengers got a 7. Godfall got a 6. And if anybody out there doesn't think after that it's all about money, you're crazy. So I want to say this right now. IGN is corrupt. They are not reviewing games with your best interests. They are reviewing games based on 2 things. Money they receive from the companies that they are doing the reviews for, and early access. Because they don't just do reviews. They do first looks and strategy videos, and the games won't give them the rights to do that early if they don't give them a good review. And that's the problem. You can check it out on my Terrible Talk. I say the same thing, but I say it much nicer. I'm actually pissed now because this is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, that's my little rant. I'm sorry if it made anybody angry. I'm not sorry if it made IGN angry. You should be angry. You should be angry at yourselves. You should be ashamed. You're supposed to be fighting for us. You're supposed to be advocating for the players, and you drop the ball every time you pull this shit. Godfall is not a 6. And if it is a 6, Marvel's Avengers is a 4. And that's not how you scored it. You look back at any of the scores, heck, Ubisoft's Valhalla, Brandon Tyrell actually says on Unlocked that it crashed his system 3 times. He didn't mind because it was a Series X and he had quick resume, but the game itself hard crashed on his system 3 times. They gave that an 8. Godfall has not hard crashed anybody's system. This is ridiculous. This needs to be done. And it is because all the first stuff for Godfall went to Eric's instead of IGN. All right. So now that I've said that, now that I've said this review, guys, as usual, you can check us out on Facebook at OldManGamingDH, on Twitter at OldManGaming9. You can join our Discord. The link will be in the description below. You can influence this and all of our shows from there. And, hey, we just like to hear from you. You think I'm wrong, you think I'm right. I just want to hear from you. I don't even care. And as far as it goes, guys, you guys keep watching and listening. I will keep making them no matter what. I'll see you guys later.